So now I'd like to get Paul's perspective on this, because you said a few really interesting things. Firstly, not everybody is got a quantum physics-based technology and is going to have the kind of earth-shattering change potential that your company has. So, Paul, when you think about what you saw in Jordy and his business, and you think about all the other entrepreneurs in BC that are out trying to build a value proposition, pitch investors, what are the kinds of things that you saw in this deal or in this story that you look for in other folks' stories?
Well, he didn't tell me all the stuff he did before. He just said, I'll wrestle you for the 50 grand. I lost. Actually, you know, I tried to put down some things of what we look for. And so basically it's people, product, process, and market. And I'll go in a little bit more detail about each of them, but it gets down to, at the end of the day, people first. And there are a lot of people that we will meet and see along the way. And what we're really looking for is someone who has proven success and is an expert in some particular field. Even if it's not the field or the presentation or what they're currently working in, that's fine, because you know, we try to understand who it is that that person is, what they're really good at, and trying to find if there's something else we can put them in if it's not what they're currently presenting. And realistically, when we first met Jordy, I was still Electronic Arts, and we were trying to recruit Jordy to do a job that he probably wasn't ideal for. He'd said, no, I got a better idea for you. And, you know, for us, it is, he clearly knew physics. And he was going to apply it in an area that was way beyond what we would have done in video games in the early 90s. Or late 90s, actually. And then the second thing is, I do believe in that quote there, and there's different versions of it, but basically, something that's clearly understood can be clearly explained. And, you know, Jordy could succinctly talk about what quantum computing is, which, you know, to this day, it always makes sense when he's around, never makes sense when he's not in the room anymore. But, you know, the idea of being in two places at once and what the applications were. And at the end of the day, the applications of quantum computing is that as a quantum computer, you can do parallel processing a lot better than a classical computer. So things like pattern recognition, the traveling salesman problem, you know, finding and identifying images and people within images are things that have clear applications. You know, we've all got thousands of pictures. I don't know anybody who actually categorizes any of them. If you can start searching your pictures, then obviously there's all these security implications. If you can do pattern matching, then obviously there's all this encryption and cryptology applications that becomes highly valuable.
So clearly the product had a lot to do with your interest in it. So people, obviously Jordy comes to the table with you know, a fair bit of prominence in terms of his understanding of the technology. Product speaks for itself in terms of what the potential is for it after you're able to understand it. Tell us about, quickly if you could, market and process. Market, I think we probably have a sense of what's the market for the product, but go ahead and give us some commentary and particularly spend some time on process.
Well, we were pretty sure that if we could actually build one of these things, that there would be a pretty big market, and there's a huge market for it for two reasons. One of which is just the applications I've talked about, and the second one is that before you even get close to having it so it can perform well enough, there'll be a race to market with people who will have to buy the machine, mainly to go after the algorithms and the patents that will trigger from that. So we'll sell enough machines just to get that process started. In process, it gets down to this. We knew that the odds of success were low. And so when Jordy said, okay, what percentage of your portfolio are you willing to take a real flyer? This would be one of those where, you know, it is got a 90% chance of being worth zero. And, you know, and maybe higher than that. And, you know, maybe a chance, but if it hits, it's going to be a big home run. The process part is that no matter how well you put together a business plan, we know that along the way, there's always going to be something that comes up that doesn't go according to plan. And we don't know what it is because we knew we'd be able to plan for that, but we never know what it is, and it will always hit you. What I'm looking for in process when I look at an individual or a team is how well they can adapt, adjust to it. And, you know, when we look at product, people, and process, the key element there is that you could build the world's best mousetrap, but the reality is that most businesses succeed based on the race to market, not necessarily the innovation and invention. And so can you actually move from building it to exploiting it fast enough before the competitors come along? And Jordy's pretty competitive. We felt pretty comfortable that he could run faster, come up with some ideas, or copy faster, and eventually win.
Great. Well, listen, I want you guys to stay up here, but for the moment, let's give these guys a hand for sharing their stories with us. And I'd like to also invite our first two speakers back up to the stage for a very quick Q&A. I apologize, we're running a little bit behind, but I wanted to make sure we got some good messages across to everybody. If anybody has a question, just raise your hand and I'll come running to you slowly. Sure. Questions, anyone? I feel like Phil Donahue here.
Thank you. A question to the two Daryls. One of the issues around Dancing with Giants is sort of the compromise between getting some channels to market, but on the other hand, giving some exclusivity or some other advantage that would limit you with working with other partners. So if you can comment on that, how did you handle that?
I'm trying to understand it because I actually don't feel like we have that much in terms of exclusivity in what we're doing. We have a very open relationship, is part of the way to say it. We're entitled to date other people. We could use other payment partners. We've chosen to focus on this one because it works best for us. But there's no actual contractual limitation there in what we do.
Yeah, I would say the whole idea of sorry, is this on? People hear me okay? The whole idea of opening up our platform, certainly speaking to being first to market and being able to accelerate innovation faster than anyone else, that's the game that we're playing. We're trying to be the preferred payments network for innovation. So we're less worried about exclusivity clauses and trying to lock people in. We're just trying to be the best way to enable people to get to market a lot faster. He's picked a couple of great partners, obviously, in PayPal, and he's working on the Facebook platform as well. Two platforms that are growing really, really fast and a ton of innovation going on them. So the reality is that innovation doesn't stop either. So as the relationship starts building, there's less worry about exclusivity and more about getting into the right operating rhythm and just really working more effectively together. Mm-hmm.
If we're talking exclusive, we're probably talking the wrong things. We're not talking about growth. We're not talking about speed. We're talking about tight. And that doesn't work in this current business climate.
Second question over here. Somebody had their hand up. Oh, perfect.
I was wondering, in terms of timeline, you just mentioned how fast you have to move. From that time you conceive an idea, what would be an usual period until you get it up and running and set up? What is your experience to date?
I think it really depends on what you're building. I mean, we see people building applications over a weekend. So it really, really depends. The role that we're trying to play from PayPal's perspective, like I said, is provide a really rich suite of APIs that are very turnkey and bolt-on to a very powerful payments network. So being able to build an application, if we're the last mile of being able to monetize that application or build a transaction flow, we have things called a mobile payments library, which is literally, you don't have to create a whole new checkout flow. We've kind of built that for you. Like I said, literally within a weekend, you can be commerce enabling any sort of application you have. We're doing some sort of split payments, micropayments, payroll tools. We've seen a lot of different use cases for it.
Paul, what's your experience as an investor in terms of the number of different startups or entrepreneurs that have come to you? How long does it take folks to launch an idea and to get it to a place where it's investable?
I agree with what was said. It depends on the product, but even before you get the product built, it's being able to clearly identify why it's important and what it's going to be.
So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have the product built in a prototype manner before you can actually start talking about its value. You get clear on what it's supposed to do and get out and start telling the story. Is it a fair statement?
Well, I can tell you that when we invested in Jordy, he it was a glimmer in his eye and an idea.
Great.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that is exciting for the community is the barriers to entry are just dropping. You know, when we talk about what it would cost to start up a business 5 years ago versus today, dramatically different. And I touched on a little bit earlier about capital expenditures versus operational expenses to get something up and running and moving. It's much faster than what it used to be.
We got time for one more question.
I should clarify, that was when I was an angel. Now that we're a fund, and we're more of a Series A, Series B fund, so we're not really a startup fund.
One more question.
This is for Gordie. I mean, $100 million into what you're doing right now, you know, huge, taking on a huge challenge, maybe one of the biggest computation, you know, computer challenges of the time right now. I'm really interested in your perspective of the challenges and potentially benefits of doing that right here in Canada, Vancouver, British Columbia.
Well, there's one clear benefit, and that's cost. We did a cost analysis of moving everything to LA, and it roughly worked out to be 3 times as expensive when you worked out all of the different aspects of the exchange. So there's a lot cheaper here. I think the quality of people, depending on what field you're in, is comparable here, at least technically. There's, it's thin in management. It's also thin on the pool of flagship companies around which you can build successful startups. So there's the usual suspects like PMC Sierra and Electronic Arts and Creo Kodak and those, but you run out of those pretty quick. Whereas if you're in the Bay Area, there are hundreds of billion-dollar companies, literally. So there are disadvantages. I think that the thinness of management talent is up here as one. But there are big advantages. I think that if you're doing basic science type stuff in an early phase, it's hard to find a better place than British Columbia in terms of the cost benefit and the quality of the people coming out of the universities.
Great. That's all the time we have. I want you to join me in giving everybody a hand for their time. Thanks, you guys.